Hello, welcome back to Miss Casella's classroom on YouTube. Today I wanted to review with you the 7 intelligences, also known as multiple intelligences. We are a mixture of all of these: verbal, visual, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, logical, and kinesthetic. And I'm asking here, how can you relate? How can you relate in terms of your classroom and in your personal life? What kind of learner are you? So what I love about 21st century learning is the emphasis and encouragement on play-based learning as well as inquiry-based learning, because it's easier for a teacher to incorporate these elements into their classroom, targeting learning for everyone. So I'll just review what kind of people each intelligence represents. And again, we're a mixture of all of them, so I want you to think about how you fit in as I'm going through them. So verbal people, that's the people who are word lovers. They love to rhyme, they love reading, writing, poetry. They have an appreciation for literary devices, such as a pun, for example. They really find the humor in it. They are typically good at writing because they have such a colorful vocabulary and they like to express themselves using words. They also have this innate ability and desire to memorize things, memorize definitions, memorize songs, memorize names, memorize a grocery list. For them, that just comes a bit more easier. And of course, they like things like word puzzles, especially like a word search or a crossword puzzle. The visual learners, visual people, that's our pictorial learners, people who need to see things. So in terms of something like fractions, you can write 1/3 on the whiteboard, but to actually show that circle representing a pizza, and then you divide it into 3 slices and color in one of the slices, that's something that's going to make learning a bit easier and for the visual learners to internalize information better. They also like to use maps for that reason. You can give them directions all you want, but they do better if they actually have a map where they can see things. And that has to do with spatial relationships. So if I'm speaking about kilometers, how many kilometers from the school to their house, that might not really mean anything to them. But if I show them a map and I show them how many blocks from the school to their house, that's how they're able to better understand something. I went to a professional development once, and it really spoke to me because this person was teaching about the distance between the planets and comparing that to the sun and the moon. And what this teacher did was he had a bunch of spheres, 3D objects. So there was a basketball, a volleyball, a tennis ball, a golf ball, a gumball, and other kinds of balls. And he gave it to different volunteers, and we had to hold them, and then we had to space ourselves out, pretending to be planets and so on, and figure out how far we would be from each other. And that really spoke to me, and I liked how he gave us the opportunity to try and figure it out on our own. And we were so off, especially with the sun. The person who was holding the sun had to go right outside the classroom door and down the hallway, and the teacher was saying that really the person should be going right through the wall out of the building, because that's how far the sun is from planet Earth. And I thought, this is so amazing, because even something like money, is hard for me to understand. I understand $5, $20, $1,000, but once we start talking about like $30 million, I really don't know how much money that is. I know it's a lot of money, but a visual learner might understand that better, like myself, if you show me pictures of so many cars, so many houses, so many boats that I might be able to buy with the $30 million. Visual learners are also our daydreamers because they're always visualizing thoughts, sounds, and that's how they're internalizing information. That's how they reflect, I guess, is by daydreaming. The musical people, they're your people who are always singing and humming a tune, and they love to play musical instruments. They like to write their own songs, and they are more sensitive to not only beats and rhythm, but tone in particular. So not just tones and pitches in music, but tone of voice. They're more sensitive to that. Interpersonal people, those are your social butterflies. They typically have strong leadership skills. They like to include everyone. They like to organize events. They like to join groups, even create a group. They also make good mediators and good people to help problem solve because they're so open-minded to get to know everybody. And in the adult world, people who have strong interpersonal skills make very good recruiters because they're not just interested in your qualifications, they're interested in you as a person and how you would fit into the work environment personally. So they have a good sense of character judgment because they expose themselves to different personalities and different situations. They're also highly organized because of everything I just said, and in the child world, they make good interviewers. They're the people who like to take on the role of the reporter. So if you're doing something like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, you could have somebody interview Goldilocks and the Three Bears about their experience of what happened, and they have fun thinking of those questions. Intrapersonal people, they are your loners. They like spending time alone. It has nothing to do with low self-esteem or being shy or depressed. Please don't confuse that with intrapersonal people. Interpersonal people typically are your deep thinkers, and they are very much in tune with their feelings, and they even have a higher sense of empathy because they really reflect. They don't make it a point to sit down and write in their journal or to find quiet time. For them, this just comes naturally. Spending time alone is a very natural part of their life, which gives them time to do all of this reflection. They typically don't like working in groups. They would rather work alone. And again, it's not because they're shy or anything like that. It's because they like working at their own pace, setting their own goals, and rather than think, pair, sharing it up in a group and sharing ideas and perspectives, they would rather open up the newspaper or read an article online, YouTube various interviews, and get information about different perspectives that way, as opposed to meeting with people personally to share information. We also have our logical people, and you can think of these people as your scientist type of people, people who like experimenting things, who are challenging things in a positive way. And even if they know something makes sense. Well, they want to do the experiment anyways, and I really like when I'm doing a 3D unit experimenting which objects slide, roll, and tumble, and I can always tell who my logical people are, because even though we all know a ball rolls, the logical people want to see it and prove that the ball rolls. And so they really like writing their results down, not just talking about it, but producing results, whether it's in a chart or a list or a graph, through a presentation, and they can be both objective and subjective. And so these are the kind of people who you can have a metacognitive philosophical conversation with, because they won't just talk about, oh, are there really unicorns, something like that. They'll take it seriously. Could an animal have evolved in these conditions, and do whatever research? I also wanted just to show you this here as far as the logical people go. They like to reason both deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning is a top-down approach, and what that means is traditionally in school we're taught to have a theory, and then we have a hypothesis, our guesses, then we make our observations and do experiments, and then we reach our conclusion and we proved our theory. They also like to do inductive reasoning, and I find that I'm more of this kind of logical person, where it's a bottom-up approach, where I have my conclusion, I have my answers, I don't understand them, I just know something because of my observations. I look for patterns, I might experiment, then I'll take guesses why these things are occurring, and then I come up with a theory. So when we're teaching, we need to consider both of these types of reasoning, because just because somebody is logical, they might enjoy both deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, but you might have a mixture of your logical thinkers who respond better to deductive reasoning, and then you might have people like me who tend to always go from the bottom up. So just something to consider. The last one is kinesthetic people. So your kinesthetic learners, and this intelligence that relates to your hands-on people. So you can show somebody a million times over how to fish, they can watch as many videos, but until they actually have a fishing rod and the tackle box and learn how to bait a line, they're really not going to internalize the information. These people do well because hands-on is usually accompanied by a conversation, so they like to be a team player, working through a problem together, and not just using their hands, but getting information through touching different textures. So your kinesthetic learners are also people who you see shopping around and they're touching all the clothes. I know I'm like that. Even if I'm not interested in buying the dress, I'm always touching it and looking at the buttons, and I don't really know why. I'm getting a feel for the clothes, a physical feel, and I'm also somehow getting an emotional feel that I can't explain. Maybe this texture makes me feel nice inside. Maybe it feels rough and I immediately feel irritated. I know wool has that effect on me sometimes if it's really rough feeling. So in the classroom you'll want to have felts, for example, or something like smooth, or something that has like a ripple texture to it. Kinesthetic learners are also a bit more sensitive to facial expressions because they're hands-on and learning through their bodies. Just to relate that up here to the musical people, they're a bit more sensitive to tone of voice. Kinesthetic learners are a bit more sensitive to your body language. So if you're feeling sad, your shoulders are down, your muscles are down, your facial expressions are down. If you're feeling happy, They understand that your body language is reflective of that. Having said that, they do well playing sports and doing dance lessons because it's a way for them to express themselves physically. And people who are kinesthetic learners love to not just do interpretive dancing, but really like to observe interpretive dancing based on what I said about body language and facial expressions. So there you have it, the 7 intelligences: verbal, visual, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, logical, kinesthetic. And I'm wondering, how can you relate? Again, we are a mix of all of these. And I'd love to hear back from you how you're targeting multiple intelligences in your classroom and how you personally fit into those categories. And we'll see you next time.